father-son team. Great to see that.
Sam and Dave.
Sam and Dave. That's right, Sam and Dave. Good to see you. All right,
Okay.
Wendi Lederman's with us.
Okay, let's see. I think we're live now. Okay, take it away, Sluggo.
Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Stilgo Wasserman back for the 108th, count of 108, Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Call, otherwise known as GREE. We have widely advertised. The great Keith Ellison was going to be here today, but has a death in his immediate circle, and we're going to postpone his presentation to us. We also have, though, major breaking news at Diablo Canyon in California. It could be one of the most important votes in U.S. history, at least for a long time. The California legislature Wednesday night is going to be deciding on the Diablo Canyon. So we have got to rock and roll here and really deal with this reality as quickly as we possibly can. So we're going to devote the first part of our call to Diablo Canyon. We're then going to be talk about grassroots organizing, Grassroots Congress. John Brakey in Arizona, the great election protection activist, is going to be with us. So we can talk about the grassroots situation in Arizona. And Wendi Lederman is going to introduce us to some grassroots groups, the Center for Popular Democracy, Evangelicals for Democracy, that's like a contradiction in terms, and a few others are going to be with us. We're also going to talk about the situation in Michigan. So it's going to be a ton, as always. I do want to open with a couple of things. First of all, Wendi Lederman, our team, this is Women's Equality Month, is that right? Or Women's Equality Day. We want to welcome all of you. And Wendi, what do you want to say a couple of words about Women's Equality Day?
Sure. I wasn't expecting to talk, so sorry. I know. Thank you. I know. Last week I meant to mention it was the I want to say 102nd. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but the anniversary of women's suffrage. So yeah, women got the right to vote just a little while ago, comparatively speaking. So it's ironic that we're.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that this Supreme Court will reverse women's suffrage? Just a question. Can't you see Alito's? I mean, women were not allowed to vote at the time of the Constitution. Wouldn't the originalism, as interpreted by Samuel Alito, say that women don't really have the right to vote?
I think it's a good question, and the way I kind of see it happening is maybe not come outright directly say it, maybe find other ways to undermine it, and then later say, oh, look, I guess women shouldn't be voting because this, and this, kind of reverse engineer it. But maybe they'll try and get it so that the 4 women on the Supreme Court can't vote either. That would be a very interesting move on their part. Question is, how far back are they going to go? They're saying that because abortion was not a right at the time of the Constitution, how can they not say, well, women have the right to vote, right? Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point, because it's really about rewriting all the rules and all the definitions to all the rules, and that's what's playing out in every way. I mean, I'm in Florida with DeSantis, and I mean, literally, it's like anything that the voters vote on, he comes in and then they'll gaslight, and it's just an example with him. But it's gaslighting and saying oh, we don't do this anymore, and it's because the history is like this, and it's like, no, that's not what the history is, but they claim it. They're confident with what they say, so we all just kind of fall behind in the wake of what they're now rewriting everything to be. And women, right, I think, are historically going to be some of the first ones to be bulldozed, for sure.
Well, already that's the case with Roe v. Wade. Does anybody else want to pipe in on Women's Equality Month before we move to one other topic, and then we're going to go to Diablo Canyon, and that other topic will be HOWARD ZINN. Does anyone want to pipe in on Women's Equality Day?
I do want to pipe in really quick.
Yeah.
The new season of The Handmaid's Tale starts in November, just FYI, because I think that's where we're headed.
I guess that's appropriate. Yes, indeed. Okay. Steve, can you throw up the, Steve Caruso, the thing from Howard Zinn, real quick, the link to the library. This would be the week of Howard Zinn's. Thank you for women's equality. We'll go back to that, of course. And we do still have the ERA pending. The Equal Rights Act is still pending and still should be dealt with. So that's something that we want to keep in mind. This would be about the 100th anniversary of the birth of Howard Zinn. He was born in 1922. It's now 100 years later. I want to show, if you can scroll down on this, Steve, Howard Zinn is the great historian. He wrote a book called, okay, there you go. He wrote a book called The People's History of the United States, and I have a personal history with this. So in the early 1970s, I was a very humble grad school dropout, and I started writing what I thought was going to be a history of the whole United States, and I couldn't do it, but because I fell into a rabbit hole. I was taking a lot of acid at the time, and I fell into a rabbit hole between 1860 and 1920, and I wrote a couple hundred pages, and I was sending them around to publishers who were telling me never to send them anything again and to drop dead. But I did send one to Howard Zinn, who I didn't know, but he was at UMass, at BU in Boston, and I was 90 miles west, and he sent me back this letter. This letter dates to 1970, and it said he liked my book, and he hoped it got published. So I showed this letter to Harper and Row, and they said, well, we don't, your book makes absolutely no sense to us, but if Howard Zinn will write an introduction, they'd publish the book. And at the time, the title of my book, one of the many titles, was A People's History of the United States, 1860 to 1920. So they did publish the book with Howard's introduction, and then it did pretty well, actually, got reviewed in Rolling Stone. And then Howard published, it was called Harvey Wasserman's History of the United States. That was their sales department's idea of a good joke. And it did well. And then Harper and Row got together with Howard Zinn, and they wrote The People's History of the United States. You can take it down now, Steve, thanks. And The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn sold 2 million copies. It is the best-selling history of the United States in the history of the United States. And Howard Zinn was a wonderful, wonderful guy. You can still get A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn in most bookstores. After being published in 1979, that's 43 years ago. So I want to honor Howard Zinn. His getting my book published really changed my life. I got to tell you, I actually was hired by Hampshire College to teach based on that book. I was a miserable teacher, but all of you should read. Oh, there it is. There's my original Harvey Wasserman's. Thank you, Warren, for that. With me on the tractor. I appreciate that. But Howard's People's History of the United States is the great seminal history of the United States. And Howard will be 100 years old today. We miss him. Howard, thank you for everything that you did for us all these years. Okay. Anybody else want to say a quick word about Howard Zinn before we move ahead? We're going to go into deep, deep, deep Diablo land now and I'll tell you why it's so important in a moment. Okay, all right, we have 100 people with us. We have 2 hands real quick. Justin and Sheila, go ahead. Justin LeBlanc and Sheila Goldner. Justin, go ahead. Are you unmuted? And Sheila, are you?
Now.
Okay, now you are, go ahead.
Yes, status report. Diablo Canyon hearing was held on Friday in the California Environmental Quality Committee. Rushed to interrupt all sorts of other committees, but the practical upshot was that Senator Laird had basically said back to the PG&E CEO, what's the rush here? Can we basically do the minimum? And what was the minimum? Is that PG&E was trying to force through a re-up of it, or an extension of its license based on wanting to do inspections to do an application to get federal funds for the recent laws. And the commentators who participated, a lot of them pushed back and said, no, we have other funding coming from the Inflation Reduction Act for renewables and things like this. So you don't need to rush this. You can take your time to consider and come back in January when the legislature reconvenes rather than at the very last minute.
Well, that's a big deal. So let me set the stage here. We're joined by Ken Cook in San Francisco. Ken is one of the great national scale environmental activists. It's great to have you. Ken, we also have Dennis Bernstein. I'll be on with Dennis tonight on KPFA, syndicated throughout Pacifica land. It's great to have both of you. TATANKA BRICCA is with us suffering from COVID, but we hope you're okay, TATANKA, and stick with us as long as you can, but don't drop dead as a result of this call. So here, John Steiner is with us as well. John, good to see you. Here's the deal, all right? This is why this is so absolutely critical to everything we do. And we've talked about Diablo before. I'm sorry if I'm repeating things that people know, but the bottom line is this: the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plants are sitting on a dozen earthquake faults at San Luis Obispo in Central California. They're about 1,200 megawatts each. They are huge. And in the mid-2010s, a 2-year process was undergone with the governor of California, who was Jerry Brown at the time, the lieutenant governor of California, who was Gavin Newsom at the time, labor unions, environmental groups, major environmental groups, the local, state and local governments, the regulators. It was a tremendous process. If you ever want to sort of examine a civilized process and how decisions should be made about big issues in a larger community, this was the model. For 2 years, people sat and hammered out this agreement, and it was agreed to between 2016 and 2018. It was certified by the legislature in 2018, 4 years ago. And for 4 years, the Pacific Gas and Electric, a criminal corporation, twice bankrupt in the 21st century, and twice convicted of involuntary manslaughter felonies involving the deaths of around 100 people, 8 of whom were killed by PG&E's badly maintained gas pipes in San Bruno in 2010, and then over 80 who were killed in Northern California fires in 2017 and 18, 2 federal felony involuntary manslaughter charges on this corporation. This is the company. They agreed in certified in 2018 to shut the 2 reactors at Diablo Canyon for a wide variety of reasons, including the fact that they're illegal. They don't have cooling towers. They are embrittled. They are under-maintained. They are losing money. They are just a complete nightmare, surrounded by earthquake faults, you name it. And so everybody was quite happy at the time to certify the shutdown of these 2 reactors over time. Unit 1's license would expire in 2024, and Unit 2 in 25. And the company did not want to go in and get these licenses extended. And so there was a kumbaya moment. The Mothers for Peace wisely abstained, because their argument, as is anybody else who's sane, is these reactors should not operate another minute. They should be shut. But nonetheless, it was all well and good. And we're cruising along here and towards a shutdown. In 2019, we circulated a petition in California signed by 2,500 people, including Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, Martin Sheen, Eric Roberts, Graham Nash, Ed Asner, a whole great crew, Eric Roberts, asking the governor to inspect these reactors, because we know that they're embrittled. We know there are a lot of problems, and he just blew us off. And we know he got the petition. He did respond basically in an incomprehensible letter that told us really to take a hike. And so these reactors have not been inspected. All of a sudden, with the passage of the federal law, the IRA Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes a lot of money for solar, but a fair amount of money for nuclear as well. In comes Gavin Newsom. And I see, I just noticed your hand is up. I'll call you as soon as I'm done. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that. And then MYLA Mike. So in comes Gavin Newsom, clearly running for president now. I mean, there's no doubt the guy's going to run for president, and he's probably at this point the favorite, if Biden doesn't, to get the Democrat nomination. And he all of a sudden says, no, we're reversing course. We want to keep Diablo open. And he presents a bill that is so laden with corrupt money for PG&E. It's obscene. It's not just reopening, not keeping Diablo open. It's levying billions, at least a couple of $1 billion in extra money for the PG&E shareholders. It's astounding. It should be embarrassing. It's just a complete ripoff. And the whole package would cost Californians billions of dollars. And not only that, it removes the liability for Diablo Canyon financially from just PG&E's territory to the whole state. So the people in Southern California, in San Diego, and in Northern California, in Eureka, or outside PG&E's territory, will be paying for Diablo Canyon, even though they don't get the money for it. Now, there is precedent for this. This was done in New York by Andrew Cuomo. When Andrew Cuomo decided he wanted to keep 4 reactors open in New York, upstate, he made the whole state pay for it. $7.6 billion bailout. People on Long Island are paying for a reactor, Fitzpatrick, up on the Great Lakes. It's obscene. And that's what they want to do in California. And it's all well and good to have a nice dialogue, except Newsom is now saying that he wants a vote in the legislature Wednesday night, 48 hours from now, basically. So we are now he has to get a 2/3 majority, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. And you have to remember that if there's this big national push for more nuclear plants, Diablo is the cutting edge on this. If they can come into California and prolong the activity of 2 atomic reactors, where 10,000 people were arrested, including me, by the way, and where the great green state of California, with the great green governor Gavin Newsom, if they can come in here and tell us they're going to operate these 2 nuclear plants surrounded by earthquake faults, the whole dynamic changes in the nuclear issue all across the United States. And it becomes and Gavin Newsom, if he pulls this off, gets the national utility and the national nuclear industry behind him in his run for president. So that is why we're doing this on the lead. I wish we'd had Keith Ellison, but there's Bashert, as they say, there's timing here. So let's go real quick. Sheila, you had a hand, MYLA, Mike, and now I want to go to Ken Cook. So go ahead, Sheila. Unmute, sorry. Are you on there? Go.
Yes, Democracy Now! Did his centennial. His birthday was actually last Wednesday, the 24th. And Amy did a full hour featuring 2 interviews when he was on Democracy Now!
Well, Howard was a wonderful man. I'd like to go back and see those interviews, so I will. Anything good you can imagine about Howard Zinn is true. He was a wonderful guy. Thank you for that, Sheila. MYLA RESON?
So this legislation finally actually has a bill number. It's Senate Bill 846. It was introduced last night at 7:58 p.m. And there's a provision that it can't be voted on until 8 p.m. on Wednesday night, but it's expected to be voted on between 8 p.m. and midnight on Wednesday night. And let me just say that Gavin, basically what his people, Alma Matasantos, is saying that They just didn't know that climate change was going to be as fierce as it is, and therefore they miscalculated, and they simply won't have enough renewable energy to fill the gap that required by the closure of Diablo in 2024 and 2025. So while they've been suppressing rooftop solar and creating all kinds of hurdles to replace Diablo with safe, clean, renewable energy, they're claiming that somehow in the next 2 years, they're not going to be able to have the batteries and whatever is needed to fill that gap. A couple of days a year, possibly in 2024, a couple of days a year in 2025, they're projecting that there might not be enough energy, and it's just all a tissue of lies. If you've watched any of the hearings on this legislation that Gavin Newsom is proposing, you just see a litany of lies, one after the other, about how safe it is, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really important. This is crunch time. If you can wield any influence whatsoever on any state legislator, this is the time to do it. This is the time to raise your voice and make sure that people know that Gavin Newsom is trying to rush through this sweetheart deal for the nuclear power industry and screw California. Thank you.
Yeah, just for everyone that's talking, we're keeping comments to 90 seconds. Please
And
try to keep
thank
under
you. And
90.
if Harvey, is it okay
90
if I just say one more
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah.
Harvey?
Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yeah. I also would like to say that I helped Mike Thaler put out a mailing that you should have gotten from PDA California this morning and on this issue, and I hope that you will forward it to as many people as you can. This is really important. Thanks again for the extra time.
Thank you. And I want to emphasize, I know a lot of you are not from California. This is not just a California issue. These are 2 nuclear plants upwind of the entire continental United States. If you wanted to plant 2 reactors that would irradiate the whole North American continent, that is exactly where you would put them. So all of you who aren't in California, please understand this is very much a national issue. Mike Hirsch, go ahead, Mike, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that people who tuned in expecting to see Keith Ellison, unfortunately, Keith cannot make it with us today. We're rescheduling him for a few weeks from now. Our hearts go out to him and his entire team. They lost one of their own over the weekend. That's point 1. Point 2, I want to give a shout out to Harvey and everybody who works so hard making these Zooms possible and all the behind the scenes work that we do. If you appreciate it, I just put a link into the chat where you can make a donation. Any amount is welcome, but we really do appreciate and need anything that you can afford to donate to keep this Zoom going. You're not going to hear a deep dive on Diablo and hear from the people like MYLA and Harvey who are and DANETT who are working on the front lines trying to shut down these horrible nuclear reactors before they shut us down. So please dig deep, help us out, and we're going to continue talking about how to shut down Diablo before it shuts us down.
Thank you very, very much for that. John Steiner, have you been raising your hand or just stretching? Okay. I want to introduce Ken Cook. I don't think Ken Cook's been on our calls before. He is with the Environmental Working Group in San Francisco, a truly great activist on all levels and deep in the thick of this. So Ken, what do you got for us?
Well, first, Harvey, thanks so much for the invitation. I want to second everything MYLA said. I don't have the deep technical knowledge that some people on this call have about nuclear, and I'm not right up close to the legislature like my colleague Bill Alio is, who has his hand up. But I have a lot of attitude about it, which is probably not in short supply on this call. This is really an all hands on deck moment, because this will, in a very bad way, nationalize the campaign to bring back nuclear, to continue investing in the old plants, keep them running another couple of decades, try and get these so-called pocket nukes, these.
Harvey, I am so sorry to interrupt. Are we not observing staff?
No, let's let the 90-second one go for a
Okay.
while. Thank you so much, Danette. We'll put it back in later, but go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I'll be very brief.
No. Ken is a major player here in California.
So
And he knows a lot of this stuff about this, and I want to go to your colleague as well, Ken. So
yeah, so we've been, thank you. We've been fighting obviously the rooftop solar attack as well. We're participating in that proceeding before the Public Utility Commission. I don't think, I think the signal needs to go to Newsom personally, that will never forgive or forget if this thing gets rushed through. There's, as the previous speaker said, there's absolutely no reason to do this by Wednesday night at midnight. We have plenty of time to think this through. I think when the facts are on the table, it will turn out to be the bad idea that we all know it is. It'll just be more fully understood. It's hard to get Democrats to stand up against Newsom right now on this. And so that's another thing we need. You might think a Democrat's with us, generally speaking. Wouldn't hurt to put a call into a friendly Democrat just so they have that backup and they find their spine in case they don't want to take on the governor. And Bill's been lobbying this in the legislature for weeks now. Bill Alio.
Let me thank you, Ken. Let's jump over to Bill real quick. Sorry if I'm jumping over ahead of people, but let's keep some continuity. Bill, you're also with the Environmental Working Group, I assume in the Bay Area. What's your take on what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I am Bill Alley. I'm their head lobbyist in Sacramento. It's my day-to-day job for for EWG. A few notes. First, I'll be quick. This administration hasn't put up a lot of hurdles to renewables, except on the solar rooftop thing. They're into renewables. We're trying to meet extremely viable and attainable goals on climate change. We're doing a great job. But on rooftop solar, he's listening to the utilities, which want to sell us electrons. The big thing on this is it's a big dispute over the supply and demand. There's some side that's saying, no, if we don't keep 6% of our power from Diablo Canyon, we'll have blackout days. And there's been no really good analysis by any state agency, and they're kind of fudging on that. And we want to see a state agency say, this is going to happen, because other people are saying it is not going to happen. Third, there is a $1.4 billion loan, some of which is forgivable to PG&E. EWG is telling legislators that's much better spent helping poorer people and working people get solar on their rooftops. So we won't need a Diablo Canyon. They also, in this new bill that came out, and the reason it's by Wednesday night is because the session ends at midnight Wednesday, but the bill had to be in print for 3 days. That's why they got it done by Sunday, and they can't vote on it until Wednesday night. And then it'll go really fast. It's on the assembly floor. If it passes there, it'll go to the Senate floor. And as far as voting, they don't have to vote no. If they lay off or abstain, it's as good as a no vote. And there are many Democrats who don't want to stand up to Newsom because Democrat versus Democrat. And moreover, they have dozens, hundreds of bills sitting on his desk starting this week that he has to sign or veto in the next month. And this is politics right at the end. He doesn't want to do it in the intersession or next January. He wants the pressure on him now to get this bill done and get his signature. Lastly, two good amendments that happened since last week. One is they went from 10-year extension to 5. So it would give them ability to keep operating to 2030 instead of 2035. Right now, they're supposed to shut down in 2025. And lastly, they took out a horrendous provision that said that the California Public Utilities Commission shall determine future land use on this site. It's a huge site, thousands of acres, and it took out the Coastal Commission, the State Water Board, and anyone else. Now it just says they have control over the disposition of the nuclear facilities, not the land use of the entire site. So that was a goodie that was thrown in. The Democrats have been arguing and a package of them, but they won't say their names because they don't want to go up against Newsom. There's no bill that says put these conditions or mitigations in the governor's proposal. It's all been verbal on that regard, and I'll stop there.
Well, people can call all over the United States. Everybody who's not in California, don't think you're not involved here. You can go to the Mothers for Peace website. Do you have a website you can offer, Ken or Bill, where people can put it in the chat, please? But with this, we got to be calling these state senators and reps. This is absolutely insane. It's I don't have to tell you, it's infuriating. Dorothy, and then Tatanka, and then Wendy. Dorothy Wright, please. Dorothy, unmute. Okay. No, you're not unmuted yet. There. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So the state senator for that district is a guy named John Laird. My
Yeah.
friend Dina Eigelsrud actually spoke to him because she had her family is from there, and he
Yeah.
said he opposed to this. I just texted Ben Allen, and he's going to talk to Laird, but I think that we need to. That Laird had actually written a letter opposing this, trying to get people to sign on to it. So when we talk to state senators, we should ask them, tell them that the senator from the district is opposed to this.
Yes. Okay. We need to do that. Tatanka Bricca. Thank you, Dorothy. Tatanka, go ahead. We have 107 people on the call. Go ahead, Tatanka.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to give a big overview. I heard from Peter Schwartz 45 years ago when he was consulting with Royal Dutch Shell. The 50-year plan for the oil companies was they knew, they had tested. He said Exxon and Shell had tested. They knew climate change was real. They knew they were culpable. So they went on their different path, as we all know. He said by 2020, the oil companies expect to go big and take over all solar, all wind. The goal is to control the entire energy spectrum. So big solutions, right? No decentralized, no distributed, something that can be metered, working with the utility companies. So this has been a long time issue. The other thing is that we forget, or many young people don't even know, the only reason for nuclear power's existence is to create fissile material for weaponry. And the $2 trillion quote upgrade that passed in the last year, quote upgrade on our nuclear weapons arsenal is not an upgrade. It's an entirely new arms race, high-tech AI. No one has it. It's part of the full spectrum dominance. So no solution for the waste issue 70 years ago, none today. It is an all hands on deck movement. It's a peace issue. And so we need to get everybody involved in this.
Okay. Thank you. And sorry for your struggle with COVID, but you're articulate as always. Wendy, and then Donna Gilmore. I'd like to call on Donna Gilmore from Southern California. If you would, go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. And yeah, Tatanka, feel better for sure. I'm gonna kind of piggyback a little bit off everybody, different things that I heard, and I'll try to be really quick. But one thing also is an important part is that they're on fault lines. Like that's a huge, elephant in the room that this is built on fault lines. So it's just, you're racing the clock. And then what MYLA said before about, and Mike Hirsch brought this up once too, is that the infrastructure and the technology, it's actually cheaper to have renewables. And so it's like, if it was just like drawn up and shown, like money talks, no matter who you're talking to. So that's all like crap that they wouldn't have, like, it's scare tactics that they're not going to have the right
right.
For everyone.
The reality is that the infuriating reality is that they are simultaneously pushing nukes while trying to kill rooftop solar.
Yeah,
it's
and
absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, no, it's completely, and that goes back to the antitrust that someone mentioned earlier. Because here in Florida, you have FP&L, Florida Power and Light, pocketing billions of dollars and getting all these tax breaks, but then they're still gouging, like criminally gouging, and so it's happening everywhere. The monopolies all over the country, and the media is allowing this to happen and not changing the narrative on climate change and the environment. But the point I really, really wanted to make, that actually something I came across as starting another little project that I'm going to get more into. I haven't had time to yet, but just checking out the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, and it's military budget every year that they do this. And there's always Trojan horses for all different kinds of things that go into this. Because keep in mind, Congress doesn't have to approve something if they decide to fund it. It doesn't have to be a law. That's how I think we went into Iraq, is they decided to fund it, but they didn't vote on it. So anyway, there's a lot of funding going into bringing like whole new task force on nuclear weapons.
Right.
And like, I mean, programs that have not really been advertised, and I've been meaning to dig more into this. I just haven't had time. I'm going too soon, but that's a huge part of it, is that this is all a push because I think they're trying to bring back nuclear weapons. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, a lot of the great work in California has been done by Donna Gilmore, who is joining us from Southern California. Donna and Ray Lutz were instrumental in getting San Onofre shut. Donna, what is your take on this push on Diablo?
Well, Gavin Newsom's only justification is that we need it for reliability. And I've researched 5 years of NRC records, and what I found is Diablo Canyon, at least one of the reactors has been down 40% every year. 40 days, how do I say this again? Now I've been in too many meetings today. There's 40 reactor down days every year with Diablo Canyon. Okay, they're not reliable. And Gavin Newsom's plan is they both have to be up at the same time. We're lucky one's up. Okay, so instead of scaring people with what he's doing, we're going to have blackouts if we don't have it. We're going to have blackouts if we don't get rid of Diablo Canyon, is the truth. And so, and this is planned and unplanned. And one of the reasons we have the unreliability is just like PG&E manages the grid, they manage the reactor the same way. And they have parts that they know are ready to go out and they ignore them and they just wait till they fail. And then it shuts down the reactor. And I have evidence for this kind of behavior.
You have a very useful chart on that 40 days.
I sent a PDF version of it on the chat.
Okay, so Ken Cook and others working in California, Bill, you may want to look at this chart that Donna Gilmore put on the in the chat on the down days at Diablo. It's quite interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, in the San Onofre fight, the pivotal point was this fear campaign that we were going to have blackouts if we didn't have San Onofre. And we had a chart, reference was CPUC, that we had a 40% surplus of power. And that was pivotal in getting local elected officials and others to sign on to shutting it down. Without that, I'm not sure how far we would have gotten. So we have that same opportunity now to show in black and white, or red as I've done it, why we need to get rid of Diablo Canyon to prevent blackouts. In addition to the reliability issue, in the Assembly and Senate meeting, it was made clear the governor has no evidence to support his position that we need it. In fact, the California Energy Commission, Public Utility Commission, and the Cal ISO all say we don't have a reliability problem without Diablo Canyon. So the only written reports we have from the government are saying it won't be unreliable. And a different issue that's even the financial, they want the ratepayers in Southern California, the PG&E, SCE, SDG&E, and the CCAs to start paying for Diablo Canyon. And then in order to renew Diablo Canyon's license, there's all this deferred maintenance that they haven't done. It could be billions of dollars. We don't know, and they're not telling us. So we're basically giving a blank check in this law. We're giving a blank check to PG&E. And that might be why, they're trying to pass this through.
Unbelievable. Okay.
So, yeah. Okay. So that's just some of the problems, but anyway, it's not reliable. So
thank you very much.
We have solid evidence from both the federal government and state government evidence. So, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Donna,
I posted this on my website under handouts. You go to sanonofresafety.org and you go to the handouts. It's the first one there. So,
okay, great. Okay. I want to point out real quick, we'll go Justin in a minute, and Danette, that Ace Hoffman is on the call. Ace did the video that you saw earlier on about the showing Diablo blowing up. And Ace Mothers for Peace has given us permission to list them at the end there. So if you want to add that, I think it'll look great. People liked it. There was a suggestion we might want to use for a musical background, either Stairway to Heaven or Highway to Hell. You can make that choice. But is there anything you want to say, Ace, while you're on? Ace is quite an activist as well. And thank you for doing that video. And then we'll go to Justin and Danette. We have 107 people on the call. Go
I
ahead.
just want to say thank you, Harvey, because that entire project was your idea and it was a great idea. So thanks for the idea.
Well, thank you. And if you add the mothers there and send us the link, send the link to S. Caruso or put it in the chat, we can play it again so people can see this video of the blow up at Diablo Canyon. It's quite good. Ace, you do great work. Much appreciated.
I put it in the chat and I'll add the Mothers for Peace after the Zoom call.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you. Justin and then Danette. Anybody else? We're going to move on to John Brakey soon and get into electoral issues. But does anybody else want to talk again about Diablo? Again, remember, we need to be making phone calls to state senators and reps. I don't know. I don't think it's worth calling Newsom at this point, frankly. I mean, he's going to do what he's going to do. So we need the, Ken Cook is shaking his head in agreement. We have Dennis Bernstein on the call, by the way. Also, Dennis, if you want to chime in, I'd love to hear from you. I will be on with you at 5 o'clock tonight. Justin, go ahead, and then Danette.
Okay, so one fact that people don't really know is that rooftop solar generation actually exceeds the generation from the Diablo plant by 20 to 40%. So you're right, Harvey, this war is a major stupidity, but it gets worse because the California ISO, the independent system operator, refuses to stop exports to other states when California is having a power crisis in terms of supply. So this doesn't just happen with nuclear, this happens in other cases. And it happened in August of 2020 that some power plants went down, probably manipulatedly so. And the ISO did not stop exports to other states. Instead, allowed those plants to fail and allowed Californians to experience blackouts. Now, blackouts obviously have cascading effects on the economy that I won't get into, but the long story short is follow the money. So it's not just that there's nuclear money in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's also unlimited renewables money in the Inflation Reduction Act. Yes, that's right. The tax credits that people can claim on purchasing renewables, whether for rooftop solar by homeowners or even by the companies that install them, can be transferred to anybody who has a tax liability. Meaning, if we really prioritized it, we could pay 0 federal taxes for the next 10 years. And to show for it, we'd have a completely renewables grid. So this sort of game-changing shift really is the kind of thing that could change even the governor's race. The guy who is against Newsom is from my home district, and he could actually be convinced to not leave money on the table. And when that happens, in addition to mentioning to all the other senators in these committees that there is money to be taken advantage of, that changes the whole nature of the debate, and that might force Newsom's hand to say, well, maybe I actually should prioritize renewables and not just nuclear.
All right, rooftop solar in California, my understanding is that there are more than 1 million rooftops in California that have solar on it. And it is by far the cheapest, cleanest, fastest, safest way to go. Where are the workers? There are 70,000 workers in California on doing solar and wind versus 1,500 at Diablo. Where are the solar workers on this? Danette and then Ray Lutz, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Lego. Actually, the workers are on all of the CPUC calls telling Newsom and the CPUC that they need to not tax the sun. So that's where they've been calling in. I've been calling in pretty much every meeting since January when they were supposed to take the vote. So we've delayed that by 8 months. But scuttlebutt is now they're getting ready to vote on it. So I really need everyone that's in California to get on the CPU website and make sure you attend the next meeting and make a comment. They are still not listening to the public. They're listening to their, the people that pay their bills, PG and
Yeah.
all the rest of them.
Okay.
Also, PDACA is hosting a climate ER forum September 11th at 4 p.m. Details will follow. And then also, please, please, please call, email your state legislators ASAP regarding AB 1416, the clean money bill, which will be voted on before Wednesday of this week. Thanks.
Okay, and the bill on Diablo is 846. All right, we're getting down to the end here. Ray Lutz, and then Bill again, and Dennis Bernstein, if you want to pipe up, I'll be glad to hear from you. Go ahead, Ray Lutz.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. Yeah, this is a disgusting payoff to by Newsom to the energy companies. I have a feeling this is going to have to go into courtroom-like proceedings at the CPUC and intervene there, because if they are going to reopen this, they have to go back on the settlement agreement that they already have decided that this is going to be shut down. And by the way, they've already proceeded on many of the acts that need to be done in order to shut down. And I think the ball has already been rolling so far that they're not going to want to really restart it. This is just a payoff to the utilities, I think. Just $1 billion for their pockets so that they will support Newsom in the elections. And that's what's disgusting about it. I'm hoping that that I'm right, that they won't actually try to restart this thing. I know that the utilities don't really make huge profits on nuclear, so they kind of want it to go away. But we're looking at electric cars coming online and a need for a lot more electricity. And there is a bit of a shortfall, but we should be working towards solar panels and other ways of getting it done rather than this. Heck, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Bill and Dennis. Oh, wait, Bill, you're muted. Hold on.
On who might be being paid off by Newsom, some would say the utilities, but they're also the unions, because they supported him in his successful attempt to not be recalled. They gave him a lot of money, did the footwork, even though he wasn't going to get recalled anyway, but he owes them for that. And the people in the hearings now are all union workers, the electrical workers who work at Diablo Canyon. Many of the workers who install rooftop solar are non-union. The union ones are doing the large industrial scale solar in the deserts and in the Central Valley. And so that's a different issue. We're talking rooftop versus industrial scale, unions, non-union. That's kind of how it works here in California.
Amazing. Dennis Bernstein, host of Flashpoints, KPFA. We will be on together at 5 p.m., which is also in LA now. So listen in and go ahead, Dennis.
Thanks, Harv. I really wanted to say, it's sort of, I'm stating the obvious, I know, for everybody on this call, but Gavin Newsom is now proving to be a profound reactionary. He's taken this stand with nuclear. He refuses to allow the farm workers the rights that other workers have to organize. He's come out against the domestic workers and their support under OSHA. In the middle of this, he's expanding his own club and growers, into the whole restaurant business. The guy is really no longer in any way, shape, or form a liberal or a progressive, and he needs to be held accountable. And I wish that a number of these movements who he has screwed, ethnic studies, bye-bye, people could come together and really call him out on the fact that for so many angles, he's a freaking reactionary. He's a right-winger, and he has taken so many stands against the sort of the progressive vision that so many of us believe in, that it would be great if the groups could unite and take him on.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, I'll see you in a bit.
See you later.
Yeah, Ken Cook, do you want to jump in and say a bit more? But I would like to replay Steve Caruso, the 1-minute video that Ace Hoffman did to kind of wrap up this session. But this has been phenomenal, and this is world changing. We can't lose this. We have got to win this. Ken, how do we win this?
That this is picking up the phone at this point, calling legislators, even friends who need a backbone. As I said before, we're really right down to the wire. There's no reason we need to go forward with this now, as one of the early speakers said so well. And if we do go forward, it's going to be a tremendous loss of momentum. And just the final thing to say is, certainly 10 years ago, but maybe even 5 years ago, we couldn't really have plausibly argued that you could invest so quickly and ramp up renewables as we can now. It's a completely different thing. And this is the only competition. Rooftop solar is the only competition these utilities have ever known. They'll do anything to crush it. So if they can keep nuclear straddling the system, pumping out its baseload, that is a blow to everything we want to have happen in renewables. Thanks a lot, Harvey. Appreciate the time.
Well, thank you. So let's do it. We have a call at 5 as well, although I'll be on with Dennis for the first part of that. We have another call 11 a.m. in the morning. If you want to get the links to other calls, I just put my email in the chat. And this is one we can't lose. As I mentioned, in 1984, I had 3 lovely nights in the San Luis Obispo County Jail. Okay, let's watch this here. Go ahead. This is Ace Hoffman.
There's no audio with this video.
Right, no audio. It's okay.
Remember, 2021, 100 gigawatts worldwide were installed. Okay, one nuclear plant is approximately 1 gigawatt. And how much time and expense does that take? Compare that to wind expense. There's no comparison.
All right, Ace Hoffman. Great work, man. I think it's terrific. Ace is going to add the, can y'all hear me? Yeah, Ace is going to add the Mothers for Peace contact at the end. Ken, if you want to, we could put in the environmental working group as well. Put it in the chat or email Ace. He's on the call. And that's it for Diablo for now. I mean, this is just absolutely insane. But, the problem with driving a stake through the heart of the nuclear power industry is it doesn't have a heart. So, killing it has been extraordinarily difficult, but this is the moment. And everybody knows, by the way, this is the definitive moment for nuclear power. They cannot build any more new nuclear plants. And one of the things, it's amazing how issues tend to conflate. A lot of our work has been focused on Georgia in terms of, grassroots organizing. And we have, of course, a huge fight over a Senate seat in Georgia and the governor's race and all that stuff. And we had Greg Palast last week to talk about it. And Greg intimated to me that the real behind the scenes issue in Georgia is the nuclear plants. Because those are the last 2 big nuclear plants in the United States at Vogtle, VOGTLE. They started them in the mid-2010s. They were supposed to be $14 billion. They're now over $30 billion. And they don't even know if they can open them. So this nuclear issue is the #1 energy issue. As TATANKA pointed out, we're at a tipping point here. If we can stop nuclear in its tracks and stop these small reactors, we will get to solar. There's no doubt about it. So let's win this one. God help us, we need to. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We're going to segue over now into grassroots organizing. We have John Brakey with us in Arizona. We were going to have Keith Ellison. I want to announce, by the way, next week is Labor Day. We will not be meeting on Labor Day. 2 weeks from today, we will have Jim Hightower with us, and hopefully we will have at some point Keith Ellison will rejoin us, and also Mike Hirsch has had a personal conversation with Congressman Jamie Raskin, so we will be expecting him in the near term as well. Okay, so we're going to be rolling along. Like I say, next week, a no call on Monday. Tuesday, for those of you who are interested, I have jury duty. And then the following week, we will resume and get back to business with Jim Hightower and much more. So what we have now for the next hour is our Grassroots Congress. We were, the great Wendi Lederman was compiling the contacts for grassroots groups around the country. And we wanted to start with John Brakey in Arizona, where it is really hot and heavy. My God, every day I read something again additional about the big fight in Arizona. So John, what is the latest with our grassroots organizing in Arizona?
A lot of work is what it is. And can you hear me? Am I coming in clear?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, good. And no, it's, you know, just an update, what's going on. You know, you could say, let's say, for example, is that, you know, I see our candidates or Democratic candidates sweeping the top of the ticket, possibly in Arizona, okay? Our candidate, Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate has had his funding pulled, and they've just torn him apart since election day that he couldn't even run for dog catcher, okay? The governor's race, that looks very interesting. It's very close, but I think that Katie Hobbs is going to pull that out. And then I'm very proud of a guy named Adrian Fontes, who ran Maricopa elections, and now he is running for Secretary of State, running a really strong campaign, and I just can't say how he really can't win, okay? But hey, you never say that in elections, okay? And so it looks really good. And also, you know, my friend Ken Bennett won his race in Yavapai County, which is 75% Republican. So basically, he is in the Senate. And if we get Fontes in there, and then House Bill HB 2780 is going to rock on, and I'm hoping by my birthday in April, when I'll be 69 years old, that bill will become law, and Arizona's elections will be transparent, trackable, publicly verified with a ballot library. And by the way, we missed passing that bill by 1 vote. And what's really incredible about the whole thing is that we didn't have one Democrat supporting it. In the House, it passed 31 by 31 Republicans. In the Senate, it passed the House Government Committee and the Rules Committee, but it didn't make it to the floor because we could not find 16 out of 30 votes, because the Senate president doesn't take bills to the, or anything to the floor that they know they can't pass because they're just wasting time. And I tried very hard to get some Democrats to jump in. It didn't happen. I can say this right now. I blame myself. I assumed that they were with me. I didn't realize how much damage I got from the fraud. And plus, being that that's this 1 vote difference in the House and Senate, they got a strong union. And so I kind of failed there. But now I'm working with Democrats. And by January, I hope when Ken Bennett submits the bill, is that we're going to have a number of good Democrats who are going to co-author the bill in the House and Senate.
You have worked, the takeaway here for grassroots organizing is that you have basically, with Ray Lutz, have secured a more electoral, a more reliable electoral process in Arizona than we had before. Are you able to say that?
Yeah, you know, it's, well, yeah, only because I would say for a number of reasons is that, you know, when you look at Republicans like Ken Bennett or the man who testified in the House, I forget his name offhand, in the U.S. House, there's a lot of some really good Republicans. I mean, they're not all megas and they're not all crazy, and they're very badly divided in my state. And I think the fraud helped do that. I think me being there for 5 months and 3,000 people passed through there, and I'm a talker and used to be a psychotherapist, I helped a lot of people understand that it's better to understand than be understood as an idiot who would follow a person with an orange face.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. So Arizona is up for grabs. We do believe we'll have much safer elections in Arizona. John Brakey, thank you very much.
Well, if I could, I'd like to add a few other things about other states that we're involved in because,
okay, but
you know,
do it quick. So go ahead, please.
Unless you want to call it, that's good. I'm done then. If you're done, I'm done.
No, you were in Arizona, you were in North Carolina and in Florida. Is that right?
Of course. I'm in 3 very important swing states. We're in litigation in all 3. Okay. The only thing I would add is democracy is definitely in crisis. It will die in darkness. Our election departments are going dark, okay? In one instance, I know somebody who filed a records request and then he got sued and then told if he loses the suit, he's going to have to pay the county's fees. That was me. And then what Lynn Bernstein's going through in Florida is just incredible. You know, I was with her when we both got ticketed with trespassing. And you know, I think if you talk to Jan Bendor and other people who are activists on the front lines, this thing is going dark. And darkness will create cynicism and will also, these people who don't have a major majority, who can win a statewide race, are going to lose, like to Fontes or to our next governor, Katie Hobbs, and they're going to claim election fraud, and is what they're going to wind up doing. So there has to be a lot of work on trying to get to Keith Ellison, who's a good friend of the program and a great guy, to follow up on our November 29th call, and try to get the ear, because we need to make sure that these public records, ballot images that can prove that elections are real, are not being destroyed. And let's just a minute more, please, is that in Massachusetts, they're destroying ballot images because they say it's illegal to have them, so they claim that they turned them off, okay? Well, it's a digital scanner. Excuse me, it doesn't work. In the state of Michigan, they're destroying public records, ballot images, because they claim they could cause long lines, okay? These are things that are really bad. 8 of the largest counties in Florida, where 58% of all the Democrats, mainly people of color, live, they're destroying images there too. And what's going on in Florida, I wish Susan Pinshaw should come on and explain how deadly things are, especially when the governor goes into Broward County, threatens the Democratic election administrator, and then turns around and people who in 2018, when a vote went through and said that felons can vote if they served out their time and filed, they charged 20 people.
Yes,
it's a matter of intimidation. Thank you, Harvey. That's all I got.
Yeah, thank you, John. Fantastic. I just got a text from that DeSantis is really this whole thing. He arrested 20 people, dragged people out of their houses at 6 in the morning in their underwear, who are charged with election fraud dating back to 2020. After John said the legislature allowed people who are convicted felons to vote. Now he's reversing it, and they say it's really blowing up on him. So we will have to in the future get more reports from Florida about that. Wendi, you have a number of groups. Thank you, John Brakey, again. Fantastic as always. You have Center for Popular Democracy, Evangelicals for Democracy, and a couple other groups. Wendi in Florida, take it away with this next round of grassroots group, please.
Thank you so much. Yes, and just a quick point on the people getting arrested. They're literally being arrested out of their houses for voting when they had to register with the state to vote. So thanks so much, John. I really appreciate all that.
So these are people who registered to vote.
The state,
they voted in 2020.
Yeah.
And now they're being arrested.
Yeah, 20 people were brought out of their house in handcuffs because they voted legally. After they needed to be registered with the state, they went through all the processes to do it. In some cases, they were encouraged by the state and other groups to vote, and now they're being arrested. So what John's saying is just so important with our threats to democracy everywhere. The fact that he's being sued for asking for public record requests that belong to the people that will protect our right to vote. And what's the long-term effect of not being able to have access to vote? I mean, that's when you're going to really start to see the creep in of fascism and elected representatives just taking the law into their own hands. And we're not going to have representative democracy anymore, period. That's what's really at stake, is the long-term effect of what all this means. People being arrested for voting, they're frightened to death just to vote. This is extremely big news. So hope we can get back.
Well, let me take a flying guess here. What percentage of the 20 people that DeSantis arrested for voting are African American?
Probably. I mean, I can't say this totally like for sure, but I'm going to say all of them probably. I mean, considering the fact that most people that are in jail are Black. I mean, in our private prison systems where we have more people in jail than anywhere else on the planet, I would guess that they're probably people of color.
Yeah, well, I just saw in the chat here that DeSantis fired 4 members of a school board in Broward County. Just flat out fired elected school board members.
Yeah,
and also fired other elected officials. So in Florida, these are 2 candidates for president at this point in time. In Florida, Ron DeSantis, a total outright fascist, although he did veto the anti-solar bill. Now in California, we have Gavin Newsom selling his soul to whoever on the right wing will give him money. It's sickening.
Yeah,
Right.
and the point about like people like elected officials being fired is that they need to be recalled. If they're elected by the people, then it's the people that decide whether to fire them or not. So it's just an authoritarian move. And so he gives one token and then takes away everything else to make himself look good.
And Wendi, actually, we have Susan Pinch on from Florida. So let's jump in with Susan if we can, okay?
Okay, sure. And then after that, we have Ana Lila Mejia from Center for Popular Democracy and a few other awesome groups. So thanks so much. Welcome, Susan.
Welcome everybody.
Hi,
Stay
Wendi.
with us,
Hi,
please.
Harvey.
Hi.
Just real quickly.
We're going to go to the end. Susan
Yes.
Pinch, reporting from Florida. Tell us all the great news.
Florida's a mess, as Wendi and John started to say. I did just want to say that Ron DeSantis, when he announced about the 20 people who were arrested, went to the largest Democratic county in the state, Broward County, the largest African-American population in the state. This is also about voter suppression. This is about scaring people who have legitimately registered to vote, gotten their voter identification card from the county supervisor of elections, and now are being arrested. So this is about suppressing the minority vote, as well as just an outrageous violation of these people's rights. This should fall on the state, of course. The same records that they used to arrest these people were available when they issued those voter registration ID cards, and the state should not have issued those cards if they were not qualified to vote. So there's a lot going on in Florida, and Ron DeSantis is on a constant rampage. You know, university professors can't express their mind, the school board members can't express their mind. And the great irony, and then I'll let you move on to someone else, is that his campaign slogan is free in Florida. And so it's free as long as you do it his way. But if you're a 10-year-old child who wants to wear a mask and stand behind him when he's speaking, you can't do that. He made all those children remove their masks. So this is all about, you know, he went after Disney when they spoke out against the Don't Say Gay bill. He's just anyone who doesn't agree with him. A district attorney in Pinellas County just got suspended and will probably be fired, except he's fighting it because he said he would not prosecute women who got abortions. So, you know, it's really out of control in Florida, I will say. And lastly, we're still fighting for ballot images, a 4-year fight. And where in Arizona, the Republicans are for ballot images, in Florida, the Democrats are for ballot images, and the Republicans are opposing it. So go figure, it's a totally nonsensical, completely partisan, ridiculous fight. And we need those ballot images to prove, wouldn't you like to be able to see after this 2022 election, actually be able to see the images of all the ballots and how people voted? We must get to that place, folks. This is really, and I keep saying last thing, John Brakey's method, I call it
Bev Harris coined it, the Brakey method of matching these ballot images up to the paper ballots and having a ballot library. This is a way to have secure elections. So, all right, the fight goes on. Thanks, Harvey.
Well, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it, Susan Pinchon. Wendi, now you're still in Florida. We want to get you on here before they come arrest you. So go ahead and introduce our folks from Center for Popular Democracy, please.
Thank you. And thanks so much, Susan, for that spot on report. Appreciate it. So we have Ana Lila Mejia, which is the co-executive director for Center for Popular Democracy. And they're just an awesome, awesome group that on the whole list that I'm compiling, they're definitely one that really stood out to me for their vast reach of relational organizing. So she's just going to tell us a little bit about her strategies and what she thinks is important about her work. And hopefully we'll have her back again in the future to expand more on that. So thanks so much, Ana Lila.
Thank you for having me. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good. Go for it.
All right, great. So
we have 98 people with you, by the way.
I see. So thank you for making space in this evening's call. I wanted to just maybe share a little bit about CPD and the way that we're looking at this particular moment and where are places that we're leaning in. So I'll start by saying CPD is essentially a network of power building organizations across the country. We have 48 affiliates in 38 states plus DC and Puerto Rico. So we're in Florida, we're in Arizona. So in Arizona, it's Lucha. In Florida, it's Florida majority. In Michigan, it's Detroit Action. I'm happy to share a list of the different affiliates that are across the country. But our main focus right now is just, listening to what folks were sharing and the real threat to our, frankly, a vision of American democracy that never fully was for everyone in this country is even more slipping away from our communities, particularly communities of color. We know that there's always been either political machinations or otherwise known as gerrymandering or siphoning of resources to make it more difficult for people to use either public transportation or to get to a polling place. But now we are having what really feels like just like a very clear and direct assault against democracy, against facts, against having actually like full participation. The way we look at this moment is that we think back at, what was happening in our nation in 1877. For folks who maybe aren't, history nerds like many of us at CPD, I'll remind you that in about 1877, there's a contested presidential election, and the Republicans, the party of Lincoln, strikes a deal with the former Confederate Dixiecrats, and they essentially strike a deal that allows the Republicans to remain in office, the highest level of office, i.e. retain the presidency, but in exchange allow for the dismantling of essentially Reconstruction and ushering in 100 years of Jim Crow through just leaning into states' rights. When you look at what's been happening in terms of violence, in terms of systematic disenfranchisement, in calling the question on legal and clear and fair elections, the parallels between now and the moment in American history that ushered just deep subjugation for, or continued subjugation for Black and brown people, specifically Black people in this country, it is frightening. So where we are leaning into, we are focused on a set of states like Arizona, like Florida, like Michigan, where democracy deniers are essentially on the ballot. These are people who were active participants in January 6th and what we view as a coup or an attempted coup against our American government. We are focusing on using geo-targeting to do popular political education through social media, as well as phone banking, and going back to good old canvassing, just trying to connect the dots for people so that we turn out in the levels that are necessary to, in many ways, stop the second, third, fourth, fifth coming of you know, a political system that only values, to be frank, the male, the pale, and the Yale. So if you are affluent, if you are, you know, like a white man with money, you're okay, but everyone else is kind of a little bit out of luck. And so
Well, of course,
that's the work we're doing. I'll stop there.
No, well, of course, with the hippie movement now, you have to add kale. But, sorry
I don't know.
about that.
I like kale for the many,
Okay.
but democracy for all.
So what exactly does your group do? What is your focus? What is your action plan?
So our main action plan right now is we are working with our affiliates to develop like direct voter contact programs. So if you are, I'm happy to send it through Wendi. Again, we have, it's 48 affiliates across the country. So chances are we're somewhere near you. And we're working on doing phone banking. We're doing canvassing. We're training people to do bird dogging in their districts. If you want to go bird dog, and that means go to your member of Congress's office or public meetings and ask questions to essentially, in some ways, the way we view it is that it cannot be business as usual. We have to be calling the question at as many meetings or public spaces as we can. We've been doing, up until this point, we have been doing public actions in Washington, D.C. as well, specifically around Roe, but really focused on, again, not allowing us to go quietly in the, you know, into the dark and let democracy just fade away. So if you have any interest in phone banking, canvassing, I'll send the list of affiliates through Wendi. If you have an interest of joining one of our protests in Washington, D.C., you may have seen the Democratic Women's Caucus, members of Congress that got arrested in front of the Supreme Court. That was organized by us at CPD. And we're happy to involve you in any way that you want to be, to really actually have a participatory democracy in our country.
So are you in touch with Andrea Miller at the Center for Common Ground?
So we work on with multiple tables. I'm not quite sure if we're at that one, but again, happy to connect off thread.
Okay, so Wendi is building a master list of grassroots organizations. You're of course going to be on it, and you specifically should be in touch with Andrea Miller at the Center for Common Ground. So Wendi, if you'll facilitate that,
awesome,
what we call a shidduch, that would be great. Okay, and also of course Ray McClendon from the Georgia NAACP. And you say you have how many affiliates?
So actually Wendi just put the list in the chat so folks could actually find, but it's 48 affiliates, 48 in 38 states, plus, like I said, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico.
Well, fantastic. So we want you to be part of the ongoing process here. Keith will be with us at some point, as will Jim Hightower and others.
Oh,
so
that'd be awesome. Both are friends. I know them both well, so it'd be great.
Well, keep coming on our calls, keep joining with our grassroots groups. That's what this is all about. Does anybody have a question for you real quick for Anna-Lila? Okay, thank you so much. And Wendi, go ahead, please. Move on. Wendi, you next.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And hopefully we can get everybody with the election integrity people involved as well, because when people know that their voice is counted, then they're more likely to be engaged as well, I believe. So that was fantastic. Thank you, Center for Popular Democracy. Next, we have Anoka Farki. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your names, everybody. The beautiful names, I appreciate you. This is Walk the Walk. So if we're ready for the spokesman from Walk the Walk, again, another awesome, just get out the vote group of relational organizing in the communities, getting people involved. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Walk the Walk USA is an all-volunteer group. We raise funds for strategic voter empowerment in key geographies. And our aim is also to build and safeguard democracy. We use the power of scientific research and connection to empower communities. We've built a growing network of over 6,000 contributors in 47 states, and we've moved nearly $5 million in the past 2 years to power strategic grassroots civic engagement initiatives in the most competitive districts in the nation. In 2020, Walk the Walk USA's grassroots partners played pivotal roles in key states. This year, we're focusing on what we call geographic pressure points within swing states by homing in on places within key states where a single activated voter can impact multiple essential competitive races from the bottom of the ballot all the way up. So we've identified 10 states that have competitive US House and Senate races, also key competitive statewide races, and those states are Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, California. And the thing about California is it has the largest cluster of likely competitive US House seats, and control of the House may very well go directly through California. We're also looking at other competitive statewide races, including governor, secretary of state, and attorney general. As you know, these are key roles that prevented Republicans from overturning the 2020 election, and will also do so again, hopefully, in 2024. In addition, post-Roe abortion access will depend on these particular individuals. So we worked with Movement Voter Project, Rural Democracy Initiative, and state donor tables to identify the best underfunded, proven grassroots organizations that focus on engaging and electorally empowering communities of color, and are led or co-led by people from those communities. So we know when supported and activated, people of color disproportionately will vote Democratic up and down the ballot. 39% of Biden voters, for instance, were people of color, but that also can't be taken for granted. Republicans have made inroads with voters of color in certain areas in 2020 by focusing on early engagement. The Democratic Party has historically given much less attention to voters of color, and that's a real vulnerability. We believe there's an ethical position here. These are the same communities that we've talked about tonight that are disproportionately negatively affected by right-wing extremism and have been the targets of misinformation, voter suppression, and election subversion. So all of the groups we are funding utilize relational organizing and deep canvassing, which is by far the most effective way to reach and empower voters. They are underfunded groups that might not raise the necessary funds without our intervention. And then Walk the Walk carved out a very specific underfunded intervention within each group to help them build their relational organizing capacity this year and or expand their footprints into critical areas. For example, in Georgia, we partner with Georgia Shift Action to fund a campus fellows program that trains peer leaders who engage voters at several HBCU campuses in Georgia. We've done a lot of research to back up the fact that funding for effective grassroots groups working in key geographies is more effective than most typical funding for candidates. In 2020, you all remember the high-profile Senate races in Kentucky, Maine, and South Carolina, where Democratic candidates literally couldn't spend all the money they took in, yet they still lost. Relational organizing is the most effective way to boost voter turnout. People respond much better to trusted local contacts and networks than to robocalls or expensive TV ads or paid canvassers from out of state. It's effective, and unlike donating to a campaign, with this approach, even if we lose, we're still building something. Community organization is a fundamental tenet of democracy.
Now, are you in touch, as again, I'll ask with Andrea Miller of the Center for Common Ground?
That's a great question. I know that we work closely with Movement Voter Project and Rural Democracy Initiative, but
Okay, so
yeah.
if Wendi, if you can make sure they're again linked up. That was a very good presentation. Thank you very much. Where are you right now?
So right now I'm in Connecticut, but we have co-leaders all over the country, and we have donors all over the country. The two people who founded it live in Berkeley, California, and they're leading a Zoom tomorrow night. The way that so I can put the link in if people are interested.
Very good, very good. Does anyone have questions for Anoka? Anyone want to ask anything in particular? Okay, wonderful, Anoka. Thank you. Come back with us. Become a mainstay of our group here. It sounds like you're very powerful, and we really support you. John Steiner, do you have a hand here, John? Wait. You're not unmuted. Hold on. I got to unmute you, bro.
Great report. Had not known about you. What kinds of donors are giving all this money, and how are you getting them?
That's a great question. We are doing relational fundraising. So we take donations everywhere from $5 to $10,000. So it's our own personal networks. We also personally, as co-leaders, make significant personal investments. So we decided that we would each give a certain amount, and then we talk to our friends and friends and friends and friends. And that's how we've grown to 6,000 donors. So we use the same methods that the organizers use to fundraise, which is relational fundraising. So it's peer-to-peer, and we've just through networks met people who have more means, who have been able to give more, but we don't turn anyone away from the Zooms. The Zooms are meant to talk about our strategy, so we go into detail about why we believe this is the best method to safeguard democracy and build democracy. We also hear from our partner organizations. So tomorrow night will be with Michigan People's Campaign, which is one of the grassroots groups. So you can hear directly. I put the link in the chat for to sign up for the Zoom tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern time. But that's how we've built the network. And it's, again, we're all volunteer. So we're just kind of doing this as best we can because we believe it's the best way to build democracy, and it's the most effective way.
Okay, John, did you have a follow-up there? Hold on. Wait, you're muted. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, John? John, did you want to say anything? No? Okay. All right, Justin LeBlanc, you had a hand, and then we're going to move on. Wendi, you'll go give us our next group. Justin, did you say something? Justin LeBlanc?
Yes,
Okay,
I didn't want to take a lot of time because I know we have other guests, but I just wanted to emphasize the development of precinct captains. Maybe Anoka is involved in that, maybe others, but that is actually crucial to actually administering the elections in which people's votes are counted.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Wendi, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it, Anoka. And feel free to post those links again to make sure, because the chat kind of goes crazy. So please, thank you so much. I'm sorry I skipped on the posting your group link there. So we have Richard Sizek. Oh, and I guess Jen Bendor is going next. Okay, awesome. So glad to have Jen Bendor with us, because we have either way, we have Richard Sizek from Evangelicals for Democracy. We're getting the faith groups involved for nonpartisan and getting everyone involved. And Jan Bendor is actually really has done some phenomenal work in election integrity and just has an awesome history of organizing. She's with Michigan Election Reform Alliance, and she's just got so much great stuff to say about keeping elections for the people and making sure that they work for organizing. So thanks so much, Jen, for being with us. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Wendi. It's great to see all this energy and have a chance to update people in doing and what works and what is kind of scary that doesn't work. As some of you know, we started in 2006, and we had two major goals. One, to restore the right to vote in our state constitution and in our federal constitution. It doesn't exist in either one. And we also wanted to make sure that every voter had the right to have their vote counted honestly, fairly, accurately, and verifiably. Well, this turned out to be a pretty major project. And we've been working on that in Michigan and in some of our sister states, Wisconsin, Ohio. And we decided about a year and a half ago that we needed to put the right to vote in our state constitution. And we had some help from folks in this group, and we looked at all 50 states. Who has a fundamental right to vote, an enumerated right to vote in their state constitution? You know what? Nobody. It all has pretty language. Oh, it's free and fair elections. Well, it didn't say for who. And so we came up with language that was pretty tough. Not only is the right to vote in going to be in our Article 1 of our state constitution, but you can't abrogate that right to vote unless there's a compelling state reason, and you got to prove that reason with evidence. You can't just say there's a bunch of fraud out there, blah, 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 we think. Well, we started working on that. All last year, we tried to put together a coalition of pro-voting groups to help us. And we ran into what is holding back a lot of progressive goals in this country, and that is turfism. We found out in December that although we've been sharing our work, we've been sharing our drafts to every group, League of Women Voters, ACLU, all the different subgroups that have voting in their interests, all of them had been lying to us and saying they weren't going to do anything this year, 22. They lied to us. They actually did. So we thought, okay, nobody else is going to do anything. We'll do that. On January 10th, we filed our proposal to our state board of canvassers. They don't approve the content of your proposal, but they tell you if your proposal is approved as to form.
Dan, love what you're saying. You got to speed it up a little bit because we only have 9 minutes and we have another speaker. So please.
Well, I'm just letting people know how hard this is when you have to do this, and even the people on your side don't want you to win. So the bottom line is half of our proposal was taken by another group. They got 1630 money, which is dark money from the left. And now it looks like there is going to be a proposal on the ballot in Michigan to plug a lot of the anti-voting action, but there's still no fundamental right to vote in our state constitution. And if you look at your own, you'll find it's not there either. And I would love to talk with everybody who has a concern about this, because if we don't have this in our state constitution, and we know it's not in our federal, we're going to be fighting this for the next 500 years.
Okay. Well, I think we probably will be. Thank you, Jan, for that report. We really appreciate it. We've only got a few more minutes left on the radio. With radio time, we'll talk about this after 6:40 if you want to join us again. Who's next, Wendi? Thank you, Jan Blendorf from Michigan. Please put your links in the chat, Jan. Wendi?
Thank you so much, Jen. Really appreciate all that important information because it should be codified. We should have the right to vote. You're absolutely right. And I didn't know if there was a link for your group. I didn't find one. I didn't know if there's anything you'd like to share, please put it in the chat. I really appreciate you.
Okay.
We have Richard Cizik from Evangelicals from Democracy, who brings all the faith groups together to get out to vote and make sure that policy reflects the goodwill of the people.
Richard, if you can give us 5 minutes, that'd be great. Then we're going to wrap up the recorded
Great.
section and move ahead.
Terrific. Am I on? I'm not sure.
Yes, you are.
Oh, wonderful. It's pronounced Cizik. Richard, first name. Pleasure to be with you. I'm so excited, in fact, to meet all of you. Some of you know. John, where are you at? John.
Okay.
From Colorado is a friend. So John and Margot are both from Colorado, and they're both my friends. So I am the executive director of a new organization just created in the last few months called Evangelicals for Democracy. And I spent 28 years with an organization called the National Association of Evangelicals, so as head of government affairs. So I think I know a little bit about evangelicals. Most people, well, let's say this, they have stereotypes. On the one hand, we're all right-wing would-be theocrats, or we're head in the sand quietists. Not quite true. The truth is probably somewhere in between. But the facts most people know. There are 45 million white Protestant evangelicals. Those are white Protestant evangelicals and Hispanics in America. And these individuals are mostly conservative, and we're targeting them with our organization. In some states, they constitute, as you all know, about 50 to 75% of Republican parties in many states. These are evangelicals who we are attempting to reach. In 2016, 77% voted for Trump. In 2020, it was a higher number, even 84%, who overlooked the values of inclusion and empathy and did that. And what this means is that a lot of people just conflate evangelicalism with republicanism, sadly, to create a movement which they perceive as not about politics and religion, but really about power. And in a lot of respects, that's true. And that's all the bad news. Well, not all the bad news. One of the pieces of information really challenging and sad is that about a quarter of white evangelicals believe in the tenets of QAnon, even to this extent of resorting to violence if need be to save our country. Isn't that sad? And there are about 20% of Americans who strongly embrace Christian nationalism. That's a total of about 30 million in the country. And so those are the facts. Those are the numbers. That's in a certain sense the bad news. I've got some good news. I'm invited here by Wendi, and I'm so glad to be here to tell you about a new organization we've created in the last few months called Evangelicals for Democracy. You can find us at .org. And preserving democracy is our #1 goal. In fact, public is saying that's their #1 priority in this upcoming election. So we think we're at the middle of a teachable moment for evangelicals. And Americans are waking up, and so are evangelicals. And there's one thought I'd leave you to ponder. In a big context, theological sense, pardon me, I am a preacher, evangelical minister, and that is that social freedom and democracy go together. Social freedom and democracy go together. So does choice and spiritual redemption. And so forcing our faith or values on other people through Christian nationalism on these and other issues like abortion, well, it's not only bad theology, but morally wrong. So here we are, the Evangelicals for Democracy, and let me tell you a little bit about us. We call ourselves E4Ds. That's the numeral. You can find us on both places on the web, E4D. We're not a democracy organization. We're not an educational entity, or even for that matter, a voter group. We're focused on democracy as a religious value. And therefore, it's about faith. We're reaching evangelicals based upon their religious values, so they will think and act differently. That's our goal, and that's what we're about. So,
okay, so listen, we are at the point now. We've got to turn off our recording. We're going to sign off on the recorded portion of this event, but I'm going to continue until 7:40 and with the chat, and we'll sign off then. So, Stephen, if you can stay with us, that'd be great. I appreciate it. And this has been the 108th, count 'em, 108th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We have had tremendous talks about Diablo Canyon and much, much more. We are regretfully sending our condolences to Keith Ellison for a major personal loss, and he will be back with us in a few weeks. We will not meet next week, which is Labor Day on Monday. We will meet 2 weeks from today. We will have Jim Hightower with us. Tonight and tomorrow, we have a 48-hour window of organizing on Diablo Canyon. If you'll write me directly, Solartopia@gmail, I will put you in touch and bring you in to a number of organizations that are down the wire on this. I will be with Dennis Bernstein at 5 p.m. California time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time on his show Flashpoints, which will be live broadcast on KPFA in Berkeley, KPFK in Los Angeles, and many, many other places. And you can get that. It's again, it's Flashpoints, KPFA, KPFK on Pacifica at 5 p.m. Eastern time today. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. That's about an hour and 20 minutes from now. Thank you, Mike Hirsch, for this and for the engineering. Steve Caruso, Wendi Lederman, so many others, TATANKA, for joining in this usual call. And as I say, 109 will be 2 weeks from today. We want to sign off, and hopefully when we reconvene, we will be able to say that we stopped.